In the final week of February 2026, two parallel accountability battles emerged in American politics. One involved the rapid expansion of immigration detention facilities across the country, with states filing lawsuits to stop construction. The other involved the continued fight to fully release the Epstein files, with survivors demanding transparency about who enabled Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. These might seem like separate issues, but they share a common thread: questions about who the government protects and who it holds accountable. On February 23rd, Maryland filed a lawsuit to stop the Department of Homeland Security from converting a warehouse into a 1,500-bed detention center. Pennsylvania was considering similar action. Meanwhile, Democratic members of Congress were preparing to bring Epstein survivors as guests to President Trump's State of the Union address on February 25th, using the moment to demand the release of 3 million documents that remain classified. What unfolded over those days was a coordinated pushback from Democratic officials, governors, attorneys general, members of Congress, challenging the Trump administration's immigration enforcement expansion, while simultaneously demanding accountability for crimes documented in the Epstein files. Watch how officials in different positions framed their resistance.
Yes, I mean, you don't want to get too into the details of like what the specific legal mechanisms are, but there are, in Maryland they filed a lawsuit with violation of federal law.
Yep.
You're talking about state law. There are a lot of local, zoning ordinances that could affect whether something is a warehouse or a detention center. Are you working on all three of those, or are you focusing on the state?
Prior to serving as governor, I served as attorney general. I took the Trump administration to court dozens of times. As governor, I've used my authority leading this Commonwealth as the chief executive. I've taken this president to court 19 times. I've not lost a single case. Part of the reason why we're so successful is we don't forecast all of it ahead of time. We dot our I's, we cross our T's, we follow the law, unlike this administration in Washington. So I think my answer to you on that would be stay tuned. We're looking at anything and any way possible to be able to stop these facilities from coming here to Pennsylvania.
Thank you. Right here. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't go to the State of the Union last night. I chose not to because I knew that we would see what we saw, that we would hear the shameless lies that we heard last night. And instead, I spent the day with a survivor of Jeffrey Epstein's violence and trafficking and assault on women and girls, and was inspired to hear Charlene bravely tell her story over and over and over. And listening to Charlene's story brought home to me how brave our neighbors who are facing challenge after challenge after challenge have to be to keep surviving. And that it is our duty, our responsibility to stand alongside them and to advocate for the truth. Whether that is pushing to finally release all of the Epstein files, to ensure that this government and the powerful people who have acted with impunity are finally held accountable, or whether it is telling the truth about the assault and violence happening to our immigrant neighbors in communities across the country, in Minneapolis, in Los Angeles, in rural, small communities where it doesn't make the news. It's our duty to speak the truth about what is happening inside the detention facilities in our districts. I've been to the Northwest Detention Center in Tacoma, Washington 6 times since being elected, and we'll keep going back because there are human rights violations that are happening within those walls. There are people who are unable to access health care, and there are folks who are being imprisoned for civil crimes. Our neighbors deserve so much better than the lies that they heard at the State of the Union last night. They deserve folks who are going to fight for the economic opportunity that they need so that they can build their futures. What we know about our immigrant community, and particularly Latinos, is that they are working so hard and paying taxes and contributing to and building our economy, building our homes, harvesting our food, preserving our forests in Washington state, harvesting shellfish, making sure that the future is brighter for themselves, their children, their neighbors, for all of us. And this president is using our immigrant neighbors as a pawn and a scapegoat and a distraction from his inability to deliver economic opportunity for anyone. except for his most powerful donors. So it is our job and our responsibility to stand alongside our community who is so hard hit and to speak the truth. And that is what we will keep doing as the Hispanic Caucus. And I'm so proud to stand alongside my colleagues here today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's response demonstrates how states are approaching the detention center expansion strategically. Shapiro served as Pennsylvania's Attorney General before becoming governor in 2023. During Trump's first term as Attorney General, he sued the administration dozens of times. By his own 2019 count, 29 separate lawsuits. As governor during Trump's second term, he's sued 19 times. According to his statement, with a perfect record, we've not lost a single case. Most recently, in February 2025, Shapiro sued to unfreeze over $2 billion in federal funding that the Trump administration had blocked his stay-tuned Detention about detention facilities suggests Pennsylvania is evaluating multiple legal strategies, federal law violations, like Maryland's NEPA lawsuit, state law, and local zoning ordinances. Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown filed suit on February 23, 2026, alleging DHS violated the National Environmental Policy Act by purchasing a $102 million warehouse without conducting environmental reviews or seeking public input. The Department of Homeland Security plans to spend more than $38 billion in 2026 on detention centers, purchasing warehouses across multiple states to convert into facilities holding the 1,500-plus detainees each. Pennsylvania has 2 such facilities planned, in Berks and Schuylkill counties. Congresswoman Emily Randall connects 2 accountability issues: Epstein files and immigration enforcement. Randall represents Washington's 6th District, which includes Tacoma. She's visited the Northwest ICE Detention Center in Tacoma 6 times since being elected, documenting conditions. Instead of attending Trump's State of the Union on February 25, 2026, Randall spent the day with an Epstein survivor she identifies as Charlene. Multiple Democratic members of Congress brought Epstein survivors as State of the Union guests, part of a coordinated effort by the House Democratic Women's Caucus, whose members wore "Stand with Survivors" pins at the address. Randall's framework treats both issues, Epstein accountability and detention center conditions, as questions about government protecting the vulnerable versus protecting the powerful. Watch what happened when members of Congress held a press conference specifically about Epstein file oversight.
But yes, in the back. Yeah, we're all going together. Yeah, I mentioned that in my remarks. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I don't know if we're going to get. We're all going, and we have set up appointments to go. Yes.
You asked for unanimous consent on the floor a few weeks ago. Whip Barrasso objected. What is your floor strategy moving forward to kind of get Senate action on this?
Well, the bottom line is the Republicans all voted for it, every single one, and we're going to keep at it. We're going to use every strategy we can, going to the Justice Department, seeking lawsuits, as well as whatever legislative strategies will work. Yes.
Over in the House side, the Clintons are being deposed starting today and tomorrow in the Epstein investigation. Just your general reaction into that?
Look, all the truth should come out, period. Yes.
Thank you, Senator Schumer from the Italian National TV. Just 2 quick questions. One, do you also see a difference between the treatment that this case has been happening in Europe and here in the
As my colleagues well outlined, I agree.
Second question, how do you react to people who say that Democrats and Republicans are enacting a new form of McCarthyism, basically judging guilty by association, whoever is in or
Yeah, all we want is the truth. The truth.
Is there any danger?
Yes.
Is there any effort to reach out to the woman who made the claim against President Trump?
There will be efforts to reach out to everyone who's willing to come forward and speak. And do you want to talk about that?
I think I mentioned in my remarks.
Yeah.
The letter on preserving evidence and witnesses.
Yeah, so we can get it. Yes.
When you see the unredacted documents, what can the public expect from you to inform them? Can you do anything to inform them?
Well, we're not going to prejudge. Let's see what's in the documents. We want to protect people's identities, but we also want the truth to come out, and we will walk that line with great vigor. Yes.
There are an additional 3 million files that have not been released, and many, it seems, of the files that have been released remain redacted. So what steps are you taking to ensure that those redactions are
Yeah, we're going to demand justification for any redactions, and if the redactions are cover-ups as opposed to protecting identities, we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to get to the bottom of it. Okay? Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
This press conference reveals the congressional oversight strategy on Epstein files. The Epstein Files Transparency Act, which passed with bipartisan support, required the Department of Justice to release all files related to Jeffrey Epstein by a specific deadline in early 2026. According to multiple members of Congress, DOJ has failed to comply fully with that requirement. The 3 million files that have not been released reference is significant. While some Epstein documents were released in February 2026, members of Congress are stating that millions of additional pages remain classified or heavily redacted. The question at this press conference is whether those redactions protect victims' identities or protect powerful individuals from accountability. On February 9, 2026, members of Congress began viewing unredacted versions of the Epstein files at the Department of Justice. Representative Jamie Raskin, ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, reported finding 3,000 pages in which survivors' names were not redacted, exposing victims, while simultaneously finding lots of examples of people's names being redacted when they were not victims. Raskin stated that among the redacted names, people whose identities were protected, were billionaire Leslie Wexner and Donald Trump. This creates the pattern. Members of Congress are challenging victims' identities exposed, while powerful individuals' names are redacted even when they're not victims requiring protection. The Letter on Preserving Evidence and Witnesses, mentioned in the press conference, refers to congressional efforts to ensure that DOJ doesn't destroy evidence or allow witnesses to disappear before full oversight occurs. Representative Deborah Ross and Sidney Kamlager Dove led 67 members of the Democratic Women's Caucus in demanding that the DOJ Inspector General investigate the agency's handling of the Epstein file release. The statement, "Republicans all voted for it," refers to the Epstein Files Transparency Act passing with bipartisan support. The issue isn't partisan disagreement about whether files should be released. Both parties voted yes. The issue is DOJ's implementation, inconsistent redactions, unexplained delays, and failure to produce the legally required report to Congress explaining redaction decisions. Multiple survivors attended Trump's State of the Union as congressional guests. Representative Pramila Jayapal brought Marike Chartouni. Representative Eric Swalwell brought Teresa Helm. Representative Maxine Dexter brought Lisa Phillips. Their presence was intended to remind the president and the public that Epstein's crimes had real victims who are still waiting for full accountability. The congressional strategy involves multiple simultaneous tracks: viewing unredacted files at DOJ, demanding Inspector General investigations, preserving evidence and witnesses, bringing survivors to high-profile events, and threatening lawsuits if DOJ doesn't comply. Though we're going to get to the bottom of it, refrain signals continued pressure regardless of administration cooperation. These moments show how Democratic officials at different levels are using their legal powers to challenge Trump administration policies. Governors like Josh Shapiro are considering lawsuits over detention facility construction, not to block immigration enforcement outright, but to argue that federal agencies are bypassing required environmental reviews under NEPA. The strategy focuses on process, not ideology. In Congress, members are conducting oversight visits, demanding unredacted Epstein files, and questioning why DOJ redactions appear to shield powerful names while exposing survivors. The issue isn't just transparency, it's whether accountability applies equally. Representative Randall frames both fights around a common principle. Does government protect vulnerable people or powerful interests? The State of the Union moment, with survivors present in the chamber, turned symbolism into pressure. Public visibility forces accountability in ways letters and hearings often don't. Whether these strategies succeed depends on the courts, DOJ decisions, and executive response. But what's already happened is this. Formal allegations are now on the record about environmental violations, detention conditions, and selective redactions in the Epstein files. The accountability question is no longer rhetorical. It's documented. If this kind of analysis matters to you, subscribe.